This electric outboard just did something nobody thought possible. When this boat pulled up to the start line, the guys in the gas boats were smiling at it. You can't blame them. Everybody on the water knew what an electric boat was. It was the slow thing, the quiet little rental you put around the dock in. Nobody brought one to a real race, and nobody expected it to do anything but embarrass itself. Then it took off. No roar, no smoke, barely a sound at all. And it went down that race course at 116 miles an hour, in front of 100,000 people, faster than any electric boat had ever gone. That day, it was faster than most of the gas boats that had been smiling at it. The record it beat belonged to Jaguar, the car company. They'd put a real racing team and their Formula E engineers on it, and this boat took their number and beat it badly. And the guy driving it was one of the best powerboat racers alive, a 3-time world champion. When they first came to him with this, he thought they were wasting their time. He didn't believe an electric boat could do it either. So that's what this is about. Who built this thing, and the odd little moment on a dock that set the whole thing in motion. Why the best driver they could find spent months doubting it, right up until he was the one holding the wheel at 116. And the question underneath all of it, the one you've probably wondered yourself, whether the gas motor hanging off your boat is about to go the way of the dinosaur. Here's the first thing that doesn't fit. The man who built the boat that humiliated the gas world was a gas guy. Alex Mongin grew up on the water in Quebec, trained as an electrician, and then spent about 15 years importing high-powered American speedboats into Canada and racing them himself. He wasn't some environmentalist who hated engines. He loved fast boats, and he made his living off loud ones. That matters because the man who set out to prove electric could beat gas came up entirely inside gas culture. He wasn't an outsider throwing rocks. He was one of them. And there's a detail in his past that reframes something you probably believe about electric boats without realizing it. For years, Mongin's company built electric boats already. Slow ones, little rental boats for hotels and resorts, the kind you take out for a lazy hour on a calm lake. He built more than 3,000 of them. Now think about where most people got their one and only experience with an electric boat. It was a rental on vacation. Gutless, silent, harmless, capped at a crawl so tourists couldn't hurt themselves. That is the boat that taught an entire generation that electric means slow. And Mongin built thousands of them. The reputation he spent the next 10 years fighting, he helped create with his own hands. Then came the moment that turned him. He tells this story himself. He was at a poker run, a day where people take their big powerful boats out together, and he'd been running a 46-footer hard all day. When he pulled in, there was an older, distinguished-looking man on the dock, watching him with a look on his face. The look bugged him enough that he walked over and asked if he'd done something wrong. Gotten too close to the man's boat, maybe. The man said no. Then he asked one quiet question. How much fuel did you burn today? Mongin already had the electric side of his business going, so he knew the answer was ugly. And he admitted he was almost ashamed to say it out loud. The man just handed him a business card and said, if you want to see a nice boat, come by Monday. That was the whole conversation. But that one question, how much did you burn today, stuck in him and wouldn't let go. So he made a decision that sounds obvious now and sounded insane then. He wasn't going to argue anyone into electric. Nobody changes a boater's mind with a lecture about the environment. He was going to take the slow toy he'd spent his life building and make it fast enough to beat the gas boats in a straight line, in public, with the whole industry watching. Kill the reputation by outrunning it. There was just one problem. To break a world speed record, he needed a driver who actually knew how to run a boat at those speeds. And the man he wanted didn't think it could be done. The driver Mongin wanted is named Sean Tarenti. And in the powerboat world, that name means something. He's a 3-time Formula One boat racing world champion. When you want to know if something can be driven at the edge of physics on water, he's one of the small handful of people on Earth qualified to tell you. And when Mongin first called him about setting an electric speed record, Tarenti basically thought it was a waste of time. He says it plainly, he was skeptical about electric, same as everyone else. And on top of that, he was busy with his own offshore racing and a raceboat business he runs. A record attempt is not a weekend favor. He knew exactly what it takes. The money, the crew, the months of work, and he didn't believe an electric boat was worth pouring all that into. This is the part worth sitting with. The single most qualified driver they could find, a world champion, had the same doubt as the guy smiling on the start line. He thought electric was slow too. What changed his mind wasn't a sales pitch. Munjin just kept after him, got him to a dinner, and kept talking. And here's the detail that tells you how hard this actually was, straight from Torrente himself. When he heard which boat they'd chosen to attempt the record in, his reaction was that it was going to make it even harder. The expert looked at the plan and thought it was tougher than Munjin was letting on. That's not a man being sold a dream. That's a professional seeing the problems up close and signing on anyway. They didn't take some sleek, purpose-built torpedo either. They took a regular racing catamaran hull and had to solve a problem nobody had really solved before. Where do you put the batteries? A gas boat carries a couple hundred pounds of fuel. An electric boat at this power needs a massive, heavy battery pack. And you can't just bolt it anywhere. It changes how the whole boat sits and handles at speed. They ended up building the packs into the sides of the boat, into the gunwales, to keep the weight balanced. That's the kind of problem that doesn't show up in a brochure, and it's why a world champion looked at the job and winced. The boat went in the water in early August of 2023. 23 days later, it was sitting at the start line at the Lake of the Ozarks shootout, the biggest unsanctioned boat race in the country, with 100,000 people watching and the skeptic himself strapped into the seat. And then, the thing everyone said couldn't happen, happened. When the boat launched, the first thing people noticed was what they didn't hear. A gas race boat at full throttle is violent to stand near. It hits you in the chest. This thing just went, fast and low and almost quiet, and crossed the line at 116 miles an hour. That beat the old electric record, which belonged to Jaguar's racing team, and it beat it by nearly 30 miles an hour. To put that number into perspective, at that speed, the electric boat was quicker than roughly 80% of gas boats that showed up to that race. Not the slow ones, most of them. Now, here's the part that actually matters to you, because it's the reason this wasn't a fluke. And it's the one piece of this whole story you can take to any boat conversation for the rest of your life. Electric motors have a trick gas engines physically cannot copy. A gas engine makes almost no power at the bottom. You know this if you've ever run a boat. You push the throttle and the engine has to climb. It revs up through its range and the real shove only shows up near the top. That's why a gas boat takes a moment to get going and then builds. An electric motor is the opposite. It makes its full twisting force the instant it starts turning, from zero. There's no climb, no waiting, no building. You touch it and everything it has is already there. On the water, that changes how the boat feels in a way numbers don't quite capture. The launch is instant. The boat gets up and planes faster than a gas motor rated at the same power. Because it isn't waiting to reach its strong range, it's already in it. This is why the makers of these motors, including Mercury on its own electric outboards, will tell you an electric can out-accelerate a gas outboard of the same rating off the line. Not because it has more power on paper, but because it delivers what it has immediately instead of over a few seconds. Add the other things you'd feel standing on that boat. Almost no noise, so you can actually talk to the person next to you at speed. Almost no vibration coming up through the deck. No fumes blowing back over you. And far fewer moving parts underneath you. No fuel system to gum up, no impeller cooking itself, no oil, no winterizing. Because most of the stuff that breaks on your motor and lands you at the repair shop simply isn't there on an electric. So the record wasn't a stunt that got lucky. It was a demonstration of something real. Electric doesn't match gas off the line, it beats it. And it does it because of how the motor delivers power, which is a thing gas can't fix no matter how good the engine gets. That's the part nobody on that start line understood until they watched it happen. But before you go trade in your motor, you need the other half of this, the half nobody selling you an electric boat leads with. Because there's a very good reason the gas boat is still on your transom, and it comes down to two numbers. Quick thing before those two numbers. Everything shops overcharge you for, the impeller, the fuel system, the carbs, lives in parts an electric doesn't even have. But your motor is gas, and it has all of them, which makes you a target every time it breaks. So I built the guide that fixes that, what every repair should really cost, the tricks shops use to pad the bill, and the jobs you can do yourself. It's in the description because the day your motor breaks, you want the number before they say it. Now, those two numbers. The first number is range. The record boat, set up for normal driving instead of a speed run, goes about 50 miles on a charge. And for a lot of boating, that's genuinely fine. Most people take their boat out, putt around for a few hours, and never go more than 10 miles from the ramp. 50 miles covers that day easily. But now think about the guy who runs 30 miles offshore to fish, or the family that cruises all day and gunk holes into the evening. 50 miles round trip with no gas dock in the middle of the ocean is not a range, it's a leash. And unlike a gas boat, you can't fix it by carrying a spare can. When the battery's done, you're done. And you're waiting on a charger, not a 5-minute fill-up. The second number is price, and it's the one that stops most people cold. This is expensive technology right now. A full high-voltage electric outboard setup, motor, and the batteries to feed it runs well into the tens of thousands of dollars, and complete rigs on a finished boat climb past $100,000. The motor itself isn't even the worst part. The batteries are. They're the heavy part, the expensive part, and the part that wears over time. And they're the single biggest reason an electric setup costs what a whole nice used boat and trailer would cost you. So put the two together. 50 miles and a price tag that makes you blink, and you understand why the boat on your transom is still gas. This is also why the marine industry itself, the magazines and the mechanics who cover this stuff for a living, still describe electric outboards heading into this year as a novelty for most buyers. Not a joke anymore, they're careful to say that, but not the practical choice yet for the average person who needs range and doesn't want to spend 6 figures. For coastal running, for offshore, for long days far from a plug, gas and diesel still win, and it isn't close. Here's the honest way to hold both of these facts at once, because the internet will try to sell you on one side or the other. Electric isn't losing, it's early. It is genuinely better at some things right now, today, and genuinely worse at others. And pretending either half isn't true is how people get talked into the wrong boat. The record proved the performance is real. The price tag and the range prove it's not for everybody yet. Both things are true on the same afternoon. Which leaves you with the only question that actually matters. Not whether electric is impressive, it is. The question is whether any of this should change what you do with your boat, your money, and your next few years on the water. Start with what actually changed, because this is the part that's real and easy to miss under all the record-breaking noise. That same motor from the record boat isn't a race-only science project anymore. It's on real boats now, regular ones, pontoons and center consoles and bow riders, sitting on dealer floors where a normal person can walk up and buy one. That's the shift. Electric outboards cross the line from a thing you watch on the internet to a thing you can put on your boat this year. A few years ago, that wasn't true. Now it is. So here's the honest breakdown of whether it's for you, and it comes down to how you actually use the water. If you run a small lake, if it's a pontoon for sunset cruises, a tender to get out to a mooring, a fishing boat you creep around a quiet cove in, electric already makes real sense today. Silent so you don't spook the fish or the neighbors, instant power off the line, and almost nothing to break or maintain. On that kind of water, the 50-mile range isn't a limit, it's more than you'll ever use in a day. For those people, this isn't the future. It's a legitimate choice right now. If you run offshore, if you cover long distances, if you're far from a plug for days, or if you just can't stomach a 6-figure rig, keep your gas motor and don't feel bad about it. It's the right call, and it'll stay the right call for years. Nobody serious is telling you to repower your offshore boat with batteries in 2026. But there's one more thing you need to know, because it takes this out of your hands whether you like it or not. Around the country, and faster in Europe, cities and towns are starting to restrict or outright ban gas motors on certain lakes and waterways. Quiet lakes, drinking water reservoirs, protected areas. If the water you love ends up on that list, the choice gets made for you, and the people who understand electric early won't be scrambling. That's the real reason to care, even if you're a die-hard gas guy. Not because electric is going to beat your motor on the open ocean. Because the rules on your local lake might change before the technology even has to. So here's where it all lands. They laughed at electric because for 30 years it earned the laugh. Then a gas racer who built those slow boats himself got tired of the joke, talked a doubting world champion into a carbon catamaran, and drove it past 116 miles an hour, faster than the boats that were smiling at him. That didn't make electric the answer for everybody. It made it impossible to laugh at. The slow toy era is over. What comes next depends less on the motor and more on how you use your water. And now, you actually know enough to make that call for yourself.